Are we good?
Let's see here. Recording now. Check. Check. Recording now. Check. Check. Okay. You're on, Bebe.
Okay. I want to start out by talking just a little bit about my early childhood, as far back as I can remember. Um, all of you know that I was an only child, a spoiled brat, and things that I remember when I was a little girl was when I was like 3 or 4 years old. My daddy lots of times would give me a bath, and back at that time we had registers in the floor that heated our house, and I think it was heated by coal because it came up through just real hot up through there. And so when Daddy would give me a bath when I was a little bitty tiny girl, he would bathe me, and while he was bathing me, he would put my towel on top of that hot register. He would put my pajamas on top of that hot register and let them get really, really warm. So when he took me out of the bathtub, he he dried me in a warm towel, and then he put my warm pajamas on me. And I love that so much that I have done that for our grandchildren as they were younger. As they grew up, I heated their towels so that they would be nice and warm when we got them out of the bathtub. Okay, my daddy used to love to fish, and he and I would go fishing sometimes together. That was a fun time. I didn't catch anything, but oh well, it was being with my daddy. And let's see, when I was like 6 years old, um, my mother and daddy bought me my first dog, and it was a dachshund. And we bought him from a colonel in the Air Force who named all of the dachshunds before he sold them. And my dog's name was Jet. And I had Jet till I was like a sophomore or junior in college. Dear dog, because he was my playmate. He played dolls with me, and I dressed him up in all kinds of little outfits, and he would listen to me, all my problems, and we'd talk together. We also lived at that time we were at a dead end street, and there was a forest right beside us, and it heavily wooded. And once again, by myself, because I had no brothers and sisters, I would take my little bicycle, and beside the house there was this trail that kind of went down real deep and came back up. And I would take my bicycle over there, and I would ride down it and back down it and up it and back down it and up it and back down, over and over and over again. Okay, so that was that. Oh, and while we also lived at that time, it's an elementary school, and my mama had a black lady that came and cleaned house for her at times, and her name was Bessie Locke from Shelbyville, Tennessee. And I loved that lady. Oh my gosh, I loved her so much. She was so special to me. And so I would ask Mama if Bessie Locke could come and pick me up at school because I wanted her to come and pick me up at school. So Mama said, by all means, go pick her up at school one day. So I felt very special that Bessie Locke picked me up at school. And let's see, first grade. As you all know, I'm pretty talkative, and my very first getting in trouble was my mouth. And my teacher got onto me really bad. And when I got home, my mama gave me a spanking because I'd been talking too much. And that was with my best friend, who is still my best friend of 75 years. Her name was Linda Campbell, and I was talking to her. So got in trouble for talking to Linda. And let's see, because some of the other fun things. Oh, when I was in first grade, my grandmother on my daddy's side was still living, and Daddy, we had no air conditioning in our cars. We had just a regular old, I don't know what kind of car we had at that time, but we had a regular car with no air conditioning, front seat, back seat. So my daddy decided we were going to take my grandmother to California to see her son, who was in the Navy. out in based in California. And so we started in the car. Mama made me a little pallet in the floorboard of the car. There's no car seat. Mama made me a little pallet in the floorboard of the car, and I'd lay there and take a nap. But there was just one little problem. My grandmother dipped snuff. So I had to lay down there on the floor on that pallet, smelling my grandmother's spit when she dipped snuff. That was quite interesting. But my grandmother was a wonderful woman. Yeah, she spit in a can when she spit, but I smell all this stuff. Anyway, we went to California. We went to see Grand Canyon. We went to see my uncle. We went to the zoo out there in California. We also went to Carlsbad Cavern. I don't know what else we saw, but we did see the uncle, and my grandmother loved that time together with us. Another little story I'd like to tell you about is that when I was that young or even younger, once again, had no playmates, didn't have a brother, didn't have a sister, but I had an imaginary friend. And my imaginary friend, her name was Miss Abby. And Miss Abby, in my mind, is a real person. And we lived in like a little apartment in Sparta, Tennessee. And Miss Abby lived upstairs, and she collected buttons. Now, anyway, my imaginary friend collected buttons. As I am 78 and a half years old, I still remember her as a real person. She pulled her hair straight back on her head and had a bun in back. She wore a little dress and the old timey like shoes that grandmothers used to wear at that time with little heels on them. They were black and they laced up. And Miss Abby would come down and play with me. And she'd share some of her buttons with me, and I thought that was quite special. When we went to church every Sunday, we had to leave a seat for Miss Abby in the car and at church. And she was really very, very important to me. And Mama said that I used to sit in the window for hours and talk to Miss Abby, hours, and tell her about everything. So that was important to me at that time.
I missed when you introduced her. You said that she was a person or a.
That's how I remember her as a person. I don't remember her as Mama said she was imaginary, but I don't remember that. I remember right now, I could tell you exactly what she wore, what she looked like. She was real to me at that time. I mean, she was big in my life, and I don't even know how long that went on, but just a way to satisfy loneliness, I guess. And I just talked to her. Mama said I would talk to her for hours about everything. And sometimes she would let me come upstairs to her apartment upstairs, and she'd let me see all of her buttons. Like think I was 3 or 4 or something like that. I don't remember exactly. She did that. Let's see. Oh, and my best friend Linda, we were, of course, got in trouble together quite a lot. But when we were like in the third or fourth grade, we'd get in fusses. And one time I was jealous of her new shoes she had on, and I just went over and stepped all over them just on purpose because I wanted to be mean to her. And she still talks to me about that. You were mean to me. I said, I don't care. You had new shoes. I wanted shoes like that. She said that was just because they were my Sunday shoes and they were worn out, so Mama made me wear them to school, and then you stepped all over them. There's that. Okay, so everything rocked along with elementary and blah, blah, blah. Then when I got to be in junior high, we don't call it that anymore. My daddy changed jobs and moved us, the three of us, to Memphis, Tennessee. Was the worst thing ever for me. I was scared to death. I had to ride a bus to and from school. I'd always miss the bus coming home, and Mom would have to come to school and get me. I never made a friend. I was terrified. It was awful. And while we were down there, my mama had asthma really, really, really bad. It was hospitalized many times for that. While we were down there only like 8 months or so, and she got really sick. Daddy took her to the hospital, and on the way home, they had a bad wreck. Did something to my mama's leg, which she dealt with the rest of her life. And that just wasn't a good experience. It was a horror story. I hated that place because I never made friends, never fit in, all that kind of stuff. So we thank the good Lord. We moved back to Tullahoma, and I went to a junior high school um, the rest of the time, and then high school and all that stuff. I was in the band. I played the clarinet, and I was not very good at it. I was awful at it. We went to all kinds of competitions, and I couldn't even make the clarinet sound right. It just squeaked the whole time, and I started crying. I wasn't very good. Obviously, it was a disaster. Had several of those. Let's see. That's about all I can think
Did
of.
you play anything besides the clarinet?
The piano. Mother wanted me to be a church pianist, which never did work out real well. She had me take piano lessons for years, and I plunkety plunkety plunk plunk plunk, but it didn't turn out like she wanted it to. One of her disappointments about me. Um, I did play a couple of times in church, but that was a disaster as well.
There's not a lot of positive emotions connected with learning how to play music. I hear this talking to people quite a bit.
It was not good.
Sometimes that's generated by the instructors too.
Could be. It could be. I don't. I think, but I think it's just I was not that talented in it. That was one of the things Mama wanted her daughter to do, and I did it, but I wasn't good at it. And she kept wanting me to, but that didn't work out very well. Um, uh, I didn't think if there's anything else I can think of right now. Went through high school, played in the band, the marching band. Uh, then after I got out of high school, um, I decided I wanted to go ahead and start to college that summer that I got out of high school. So I enrolled in Mike's alma mater and Jenny's alma mater, MTSU, and I went that summer, and you're going to hear that same story, Don. I'm terrible in math, terrible, terrible, terrible in math. And I knew I wanted to be a teacher, and so I was going to go to Belmont College in Nashville the regular season, regular semester, and I knew I had to have trigonometry. Now we're talking to somebody that couldn't even do algebra, but I had to have trigonometry. So I said, well, I'll take it this summer and see if I can do it. So enrolled in trigonometry, and there was something else I took that was easy. It was nothing bad or anything, but my goodness, the trigonometry. I went in there, and back at that time, 58 years ago or so, um, when you went into classes in high school, junior high, or college, it was this big blackboard or green board, huge, that they put all their stuff on, not like today, as you all well know. But that's why they did it. So I enrolled, and I went into the classroom, and I sat down in there and looked on that board, and that man, that little sweet man, had the whole board full of trigonometry stuff. And I looked at that, and I thought, what is that? So after the class, I went up to him, and I said, Dr. Smith, I have to have this for my major in elementary education for Belmont. I'm not a math student, and I don't know any of that stuff you've got up there on that board. He said, "Don't you worry about it, Miss Brown. I'll take care. We'll get you through it." I said, "Do you really know what you're challenged with?" And he said, "We'll get you through it. Don't worry about it." So, okay. So through that part of the summer, I would either make an A or an F on the test. The A was if I could write down all of the formulas. The F was if they asked me to work a problem. I could not work a problem. Never did work a problem the whole time. And that sweet man, he would take me into his classroom or in his office and try to work with me. And I was like, and he said, "Do you understand?" "No, I don't know what you're talking about." Anyway, so that was pretty much the whole summer, A or F. So the midterm came. I didn't do as good as you did. Midterm came, and I had an F, more Fs than I had A's, so I had an F. And I said, "Dr. Smith, I just can't do it." He said, we'll get you through it. We'll get you through it. So, okay. Once again, every test, A or F. When the time came at the end of he was so sweet to me. At the end of that summer session, we had the final, and he had worked with me. I had a boyfriend at that time that tried to help me. I don't understand it. I just don't understand it. So I walked into the classroom, handed me my exam, and you know how you can kind of feel like people are looking at you. So I went and sat down. I knew he was looking at me, and I looked up, and he was, and he said, and I went. So all I did, there was bunches of problems and all there. All I did was write out all the formulas. I knew all the formulas, every one I could think of, I wrote on there. Handed the thing in, and so okay. I called my mom and dad, and I was crying. I said, I'm going to flunk this thing. Here I'm starting out with college. I'm going to flunk it. And I have to take it over. And I can't do it. I can't do it. So anyway, went back in a few days, and at that time, of course, y'all wouldn't even understand that this generation at all. But when you were in college, you had a number, and I don't know if you still have that or not, but a number. And like when you were posting grades, they would have your number and beside it your grade. So I went to Dr. Smith's office and I looked up at my number and it went across. I went across and it said D. I said, that can't be me. So I went back and I looked again. I checked my number, checked it. It was a D. I could not believe it. So I just busted in his office door, and he was a little bitty man. I think I just picked him up off the floor, honestly. I said, Dr. Smith, you know I did not make a D. And he said, Miss Brown, I haven't had a kid in college that has tried as hard as you have. And so I feel like it's not going to be any better in the future. Why not give you a D and you be on with it? He said, I don't know why they had you do trigonometry anyway for elementary education. So that was my first experience with that, but I'm not a master. But that's enough for tonight, right?
That can be.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That's great. Is it a little bit nerve wracking
Uh-huh.
with that camera on?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. When I play in front of people, I get that same nervousness, and I'm learning how to just. Of course, I can close my eyes when I'm playing though and singing, so I can completely ignore
That there's
back
people.
there, and I can go into my own space and picture what I'm singing about.
I've never been good.
It's hard when your eyes are open and
Yeah.
you know it's being recorded.
When I was working, they would always want me to go on the radio station, and I had a horrible time with that. I kept saying I'd go out to WCDT, and they'd want me to tell something about Campora Family Resource Center. I was like, I can't do this. He said, it's just a camera. He said, I'm going to have to go get you some Valium. I said, no, I don't need it. I just can't do this.
Well, Oliver had the same phobia. I remember going to the hospital to see him.
No time.
And they had practiced and he knew all the words and everything. They got him up there on stage, and every second, all of the kids looked a little nervous, but Oliver looked really nervous. And he had an out. He just turned around backwards. Yeah.
This one was a classic.
Oh,